Dornbluth Sohn is a small German independent watchmaker. Hey, I'm Bobby Legs. Welcome to another episode of Bobby Legs Loves Watches. And today, you and I will be taking a look at the Kalbe 99.0. Okay, so let's get right into the specs. We have a 42 millimeter case diameter, a 52 millimeter lug to lug, and a 11.5 millimeter case thickness, 22 millimeter lug width, slightly domed sapphire crystal on top, flat sapphire crystal here on the screw down case back. The case is stainless steel, and you can see it's mostly brushed on the flank here, and you have a brushed bezel but polished on top of the lugs, and you can see it go from the top of the lugs here all the way in between the case and the bezel and back to the other end, and polished elements around that screw down case back. Black calf leather strap came with the watch. Very nice quality strap, nice and thick, but very nice quality, as you can tell. And you have Dornbluth here on the buckle, which is a nice touch. Let's get right into a couple elements here that really make the watch. Let's start off with the dial. The dial itself is like a brass plate that is treated with some silver, and you have this nice white after effect here. The Dornbluth Sohn adorning the right under the 12 o'clock. That's engraved. That's hand engraved into the dial, as well as this minute railroad track that goes on the outer part of the dial. Not machine engraved, hand engraved. So a lot of the elements on this watch or most elements on this watch are handmade, and that's why these watches do take some time to build, around 13 to 14 months if you buy new. So just keep that in mind. The indices are applied Arabic numerals. The hands are blued, heat blued. You have a slightly sunken in small second track here, disc here with that railroad track in there as well. So nicely. Let's turn this around here, and we have this beautifully done crown, nice and big, easy to grip, smooth winding action, pretty much only one position here, and that will pull out to that position here, and you could set the time and push it back in. It has a 30-meter water resistance, so it's not a screw down crown, so one thing to note there. Let's turn this around and really look, to me, what the star of the show, and that is the movement. Now, this is an ETA 6498. Now you're going to say to yourself, what? I've seen these before. They look nothing like this. Well, they basically take a 6498 and they strip it down and rework it. The 3/4 plate in the back is not part of the original movement when they get it, but it's a very German. It's a German trademark, watchmaking trademark. Côte de Genève is is engraved on that 3/4 plate, which is not typical, but not uncommon. Typically, you'll see more of a sunray engraving on the 3/4 inch plates from German watchmakers, but it's not uncommon to see this. In fact, this stripe look you'll see in the Glashutte original Pano Reserve, for example. They'll do this striped Côte de Genève look. Sunray effect and engraving on the winding and the ratchet wheels, as you can see here. Engraved balance cock. You see the swan neck regulator here. Gold chatons, heat blued screws. Just a really beautifully well done movement. D. Dornbluth Sohn engraved in the back of the plate there. I could stare at this for hours. It's just such a beautifully done movement modification for sure. It's been slowed down to 18,600 beats per hour, and the power reserve is around 48 hours, maybe 50 hours on this one. But just a beautifully looking movement. And the price point here, you're looking at a watch that new is $4,980. The downside is, like I mentioned before, you're going to wait like a long time, right? According to WatchBuy's website, WatchBuy's being pretty much the only dealer here in the U.S. Of the Dornbluth Sohn that I know of, they're quoting a 13 to 14 month wait. These watches, again, are mostly hand done. This is an artisan, a small time German watchmaker, and they probably make maybe between 100 and 200 watches a year. That's my guess. I don't think they make more than 200, and they're probably closer to the 100 number. Anyway, let's put this on wrist. And I have a 6 3/4 inch wrist. And the sizing at first feels pretty big. It feels mostly all dial, right? There is barely any bezel to speak of, comparing it to a dive watch, of course. So it feels like it occupies more space on the wrist than normal, but it's just something for the eye to get used to. The 52 millimeter lug to lug is probably the longest or the widest I will go without feeling like it's overbearing or too big. And it may not be a deal breaker for some. I feel like the 52 millimeter lug to lug is just long enough, right? I mean, that's it. I mean, anything longer, geez, my draw power goes around 53, and that's probably the limit, right? I can't go any bigger than that. But it just feels big. I mean, it's obviously you can easily read the time. There's no mistake on what time it is, and that's the older I get, the more and more I appreciate that for sure. Okay, well, so let's flip over the camera and we'll discuss the pros and cons of this watch. So what are some of the pros? Well, for me, the big one is for $5,000 or just under $5,000, you get a handmade watch by an artist, by a small German independent watchmaker that hand engraves everything on the dial and on the movement side. On the dial, hand engraving the name, the brand, the name of the brand on the dial, the minute track on the outside. Taking a 6498, which for some people at this price point might be a little bit of a turn off, but it shouldn't be, and basically strips it down and puts a 3/4 plate in, a plate that is heat treated to get a copper look and then dipped in rose gold to get that rose gold plated look on it. It's just a beautiful tone, engraved balance cock, just a swan neck regulator, just beautifully done, all for under $5,000. So it is pretty impressive, especially when you're looking at some other German watchmakers like Lange Sohn and Glashutte Original. Now those are bigger watchmakers and they have a history on their own and they make beautiful watches. And I'm not necessarily comparing this to that, but if Glashutte and Lange are just way above your price point, this is another option. You do have to wait about 13 to 14 months, which is a con, and but I think it's worth the wait. Another con for this watch is that if you have a wrist that is maybe 6.5 inches or less, the size may be a little bit overwhelming if that gets to you. I know some people that doesn't really matter about the size of the watch if they have a smaller wrist, but the sizing may be a little too much. Fortunately, they have a medium version of these watches, which is about 40 millimeter case diameter and a 48 millimeter lug to lug, I believe. So I think it's very much more palatable type size for someone with a smaller wrist. Anyway, guys, it was a really privilege to have this watch in my possession and do a review on it. Let me know what you think. Please put a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.